So good morning, everyone. My name is Brenda McKenna, and I am a field representative for Congresswoman Deb Haaland here in her Albuquerque office. And, you know, it was a real trying time for us to decide how to have a virtual event when we had a really nice time last year at the Westside Community Center. So I really want to thank you for joining us this morning and helping us make this a worthwhile event in this virtual space. I would like to first introduce New Mexico Cabinet Secretary Sarah Cottrell Probst, who was appointed by New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham in 2019 to lead the Energy, Minerals, and Natural Resources Department. From 2012 to 2018, she served as the Executive Director of the Interwest Energy Alliance, a nonprofit trade association that represents the nation's leading companies in the renewable energy industry, bringing them together with non-governmental organizations in the West. She is also founder of her own consulting firm, specializing in energy and environmental policy. She was the Deputy Cabinet Secretary of the New Mexico Environment Department after serving as Energy and Environmental Policy Advisor to the New Mexico then Governor Bill Richardson. I have not included a great many other accomplishments the Secretary has done. These are just a few. Welcome, Secretary Cottrell Probst. Welcome, welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sarah Cottrell Probst. I'm the Secretary of the Energy, Minerals, and Natural Resources Department here in New Mexico, and I'm honored to join you today for kicking off Congresswoman Deb Haaland's second annual Going Green with Deb event. New Mexico is at the forefront of sustainability and renewable energy thanks to the passage of last year's Energy Transition Act. And in March of this year, renewable energy was responsible for more than 1/3 of our state's electricity generation, which is the highest level we've ever recorded. We want these numbers to keep growing, and my department is working to implement the recently passed solar tax credit, which will make installing solar panels more affordable for families and businesses here in New Mexico. Our Energy Conservation and Management Division is a great resource for information on clean energy incentives, and the team is laying the groundwork for implementing the Grid Modernization Act, which will help update our infrastructure to facilitate new renewable energy projects. As everyone on the call today knows, New Mexico has an amazing climate champion in Congresswoman Deb Haaland, who has been a tireless advocate for renewable energy and sustainability since her election to the U.S. House of Representatives. But what you might not know about Congresswoman Haaland is that she grew up in a military family. Her dad was a 30-year combat Marine who was awarded the Silver Star Medal for saving lives in Vietnam. And her mother is a Navy veteran who was a federal employee for 25 years in Indian education. As a single mother, she volunteered at her daughter's preschool in order to afford an early childhood education. Like many New Mexicans, the Congresswoman had to rely on food stamps at times as a single parent, and she's lived paycheck to paycheck and struggled to put herself through college. Through hard work and determination, she earned degrees from the University of New Mexico and UNM Law School. For several years, she ran her own small business, producing and canning Pueblo salsa, and later became the first chairwoman elected to the Laguna Development Corporation Board of Directors. She is a 35th generation New Mexican who is an enrolled member of the Pueblo of Laguna. After a lifetime of organizing communities to stand up for New Mexico families, Congresswoman Deb Haaland was elected in 2018 as one of the first Native American women to serve in Congress. It's my honor to introduce her today. Over to you, Congresswoman.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for that very kind introduction, and I'm so happy that you all joined me today. Thank you so much. Welcome to my second annual Going Green with Deb event. And I'm so grateful that you're here joining me virtually on a Saturday. I'm really looking forward to some wonderful presentations and activities. And, you know, we'd all love to be together in person If it weren't for this coronavirus, I know that we will return to that someday, but I can't help but think that we're saving a lot of carbon from going into the atmosphere by not driving, if we have gas powered cars, to a location where we'd all be together. But I am happy that you all are here joining me in this way. I'd like to thank Ms. Megan Marcy of the Bernalillo Water Conservation Office for donating the 100-gallon rain barrel again this year. You need to be online with us to win. And Brenda has devised a really intelligent way to do the raffle this year. And so I'll be excited when I can choose your winning ticket. Ms. Jeannie Stevens, Director of Global We, thank you for inspiring the kids who will be our future leaders. And yes, absolutely, kids do change the world, and we've seen that time and time again. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a 35th generation New Mexican and one of the first 2 Native American women elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. As a Pueblo woman, I was raised to feel connected to the earth and to carry on the legacy of environmental stewardship of countless generations who came before me, who took seriously their responsibility to pass our natural treasures on to future generations. And very proud also on my dad's side. He grew up on a farm, and he too was a staunch environmentalist. And grateful that both my parents just really taught me how to respect the earth. When I ran to represent New Mexico's 1st District, my leading issue was and remains the environment and climate change. I'm honored to serve as Vice Chair on the House Natural Resources Committee and as Chairwoman of the Subcommittee on National Parks, Forests, and Public Lands. That gives me a platform to work on the climate and the nature crisis that our world faces today. Many of my peers and I could not believe it when we learned that the Committee on Natural Resources had not had a climate change hearing in 10 entire years. We have 9 years to act. The acceleration of CO2, methane, and nitrous oxide needs to be dramatically reduced, or else we risk more catastrophe. And what I've learned also from being the chair of the National Parks, Forests, and Public Lands is that 25% of our carbon is emitted from our public lands, 25% of greenhouse gases, just on our public lands alone. And so I'm sure you would agree with me that we should have our public lands used to help generate renewable energy instead of using them for folks to drill and frack on our public lands. This country is a significant consumer of fossil fuels. We need to be a leader and reverse what has only accelerated in the past 4 years. We need to be a leader in our renewable energy. And that's what I fought for, was a renewable energy revolution. And I can't wait until we see that realized. One thing we've clearly learned from this pandemic is that changing our behavior, driving and flying less, for example, impacts our environment. Smog levels are down, haze is gone in some cities, and wildlife is reclaiming their habitat. This must be a turning point. We must listen to our planet and act now. As our country takes the step toward returning closer to normal, we're going to need to provide a stimulus to help the economy recover. And I'm working to make sure this recovery also funds restoration and recreation programs and supports clean, green energy. Senator Cory Booker and I introduced the Climate Stewardship Act to promote reforestation, climate-friendly farming practices that restore healthy soils, and restoration and protection of our coastal wetlands. Senator Udall and I introduced the 30 by 30 resolution to save nature, to set a national goal of preserving 30% of our oceans and land in the United States by 2030. And that will protect vital habitat for so many species that are seeking refuge from climate change and promote natural carbon sequestration. Finally, the 100% Clean Economy Act, which I introduced with Representatives Don McEachin, Debbie Dingell, Paul Tonko, Earl Blumenauer, and Shelley Pingree, sets a nationwide goal of achieving 100% clean energy economy by 2050, and doing it in a way that ensures a just transition to a new economic model that delivers good, clean energy jobs to the communities that have borne the brunt of pollution. It will absolutely ensure that we have enough jobs to go around so that everybody has opportunities to succeed. In New Mexico, we are leaders. The passage of the Energy Transition Act last year shows our commitment to reduce greenhouse gases in our state. By 2030, our goal is to have 50% of our electricity needs to be from renewable energy, and by 2045, 100%. And I thank Governor Lujan Grisham and the entire administration for paying so close attention to this and moving it forward in an incredible way. And that's why I'm looking forward to learning from what our presenters share with us today. So let's get started. Brenda, let's welcome our first presenter, my good friend and our climate activist in chief here in New Mexico in the Albuquerque area, Tom Solomon.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Yes, Tom Solomon is such a champion for New Mexico and ensuring that we have clean, renewable energy. During his 34-year career at Intel, he led the team which built Intel's Rio Rancho, New Mexico Fab 11X in 2001. The $2 billion microprocessor fab, which employed 4,000 people at its peak. He also led the efforts to build Intel's 100 kilowatt solar array in 2011. After retirement in 2013, Tom became a co-coordinator of 350 New Mexico. The New Mexico chapter of 350.org fights global warming to ensure a safe climate. 350 New Mexico's campaigns include UNM divestment, large public rallies to demand action on climate, public education forums on the need to rapidly convert from fossil fuels to renewable energy, and helping to pass the 2019 Energy Transition Act, legislation which expanded New Mexico's renewable energy standard to 100% carbon-free by 2045. Please welcome our friend, Tom Solomon.
Thank you, Brenda, and thank you, Congresswoman, for those kind words. Yes, my name is Tom Solomon, and I am going to share my screen and get started here. The presentation that I'm going to go through is called A Sustainable Economy Without Fracking. I think it follows directly on what Congresswoman just covered. This is a summary of a longer presentation that you can find on our website, 350newmexico.org. And the bottom line is exactly what we were just saying. We are in a climate emergency. Science says that we have less than 10 years to cut our global emissions in half. We have to do it by 2030 in order to avoid potentially catastrophic and permanent climate impacts. And right here in New Mexico, we are a major source of those greenhouse gas emissions due to the fracking that is undergoing in the oil and gas sector, especially in the Permian Basin right here in New Mexico. But that fracking is unsustainable because of its greenhouse gas emissions, because of its health damage, and because it's a money-losing industry, bankrupting companies as oil prices fall. We cannot rely on the oil industry. We have to plan a just transition to an economy without it, and we have to cut it in half in the next 10 years, as climate science says. Because warming is happening now. We have already warmed the planet a full 1 degree Celsius due to burning fossil fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas. And decade after decade is warmer than the one before. 2019 was the second hottest year on record, and 2020 is on path to probably equal or possibly exceed the amount of heat that we saw in 2019. And that warming is hitting New Mexico. Our state is hotter and drier. Our reservoirs are drying up. The Rio Grande right now, because of a very poor snowfall season last winter, would be dry south of Socorro if it weren't for some water releases. And we are seeing warmer winters, shorter winters, hotter summers, less water for agriculture, and increased wildfires whose season has actually lengthened by a full 2 months over the last 40 years. And the pinyon pine forests in New Mexico in particular are suffering. The pinyon bark beetle is now able to survive over the warmer winters, and they are consuming our forests. The U.S. Forest Service projects the pinyon pines in New Mexico could disappear from much of their current range within the next 10 years. And because of all of that and all of the other evidence of global warming, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change issued this report and stark warning just a couple of years ago in 2018 in their report on warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius. And they said that relative to the 42 billion tons of CO2 that we pour into the atmosphere every year, we have to cut that amount of emissions in half in the next 10 years. We have to cut it in half again by 2040, and it has to be 0 by 2050. And right here in New Mexico, as we said, a major source of that, those emissions is the oil and gas that we're extracting from fracking in the Permian Basin, and that burning that extracted fossil fuel is heating the planet. We're seeing the destruction that it causes from drought and wildfires and extreme hurricanes and flooding and species extinction and famine and refugee migration, which I think we may hear about a little bit later on today. And fracking is a toxic industry. It releases toxins into the air that damage your health, and it's uneconomical. Fracked wells require constant and costly redrilling because of the rapid fall off in production that we see due to the nature of fracking. Even when the price of oil was $60 a barrel a year ago, it was still a money-losing industry, and it is far lower than that today. This report on health impacts of fracking was published in January in the New England Journal of Medicine, and it showed that fracking is linked to contamination of groundwater and surface water and air pollution. And that air pollution includes carcinogenic chemicals such as benzene and formaldehyde. And those releases come from the fracking industry infrastructure that are disproportionately located near low income and marginalized communities where they leak those toxic gases, contributing to environmental injustice, producing few local health benefits. And those health impacts include increased risk of asthma and COPD. That is the New England Journal of Medicine. So what is fracking? Fracking is unconventional oil extraction, oil and gas production. It uses injected high pressure water and chemicals and sand to hydraulically fracture or shatter the shale layer that's deep underground and then extract oil and gas from the shale rock from the cracks that they generate around those horizontal laterals. And they start with a drilling rig on the surface, drill down thousands of feet, turn the drilling head horizontal and drill laterals, possibly at a density of about 8 laterals per square mile. And all of that is very expensive. And because of the nature of fracking, because of the nature of just trying to extract oil and gas from shattered rock, the amount of production that you get from a fracked well falls off dramatically in the first 12 months. It drops by 70% versus early production. So they are in the mode of having to constantly spend more money, $3 to $6 million per fracked lateral well, just to maintain a constant level of production because of this dramatic decline. And that means lots and lots of expense just to extract the amount of oil. That's very different from conventional oil drilling. As a result, fracking loses money, and it's been reported in the Wall Street Journal and NPR and CNN Business and in their own Journal of Petroleum Technology. And in fact, this last June, oilprice.com analyzed the U.S. shale industry as a business over the last 15 years and concluded that they have actually lost money, lost $300 billion as a full industry over those 15 years, meaning they spent $300 billion more to extract the oil than they were able to sell it for. And the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas went ahead and issued a survey of American fracking and shale producers and asked them, what is the price of oil that you need in order to just break even and not lose money on your operations? And their answer on average was $50 a barrel. The range of answers was all the way down to 23, all the way up to $70 with an average of 50. And it's similar answer in the New Mexico portion of the Permian Basin. Well, the price of oil last Friday was $41 a barrel, far lower than their break-even price of oil. So as a result, they're losing money. And their competition, the conventional oil producers, for example, in OPEC in the Middle East and Venezuela and other places that drill and extract oil from liquid, underground reserves, they can break even at a price of oil of $10 a barrel, far lower than the $50 that the frackers require. So lots of room for a lower price of oil to put the U.S. shale producers out of business while conventional drillers are making money. And as a result, there were 42 fracking bankruptcies in that industry in 2019, leaving behind $26 billion in debt, loans that will not be repaid to those banks that loaned them the money. And of course, oil prices plunged in this several months ago, starting in March, with the price war between Russia and Saudi Arabia. Used to be about $60 a barrel. It's hovering around $41 a barrel. It got as low as 18. And that has led to significant cutbacks in the U.S. shale industry. In the Permian Basin in particular, Chevron slashed its output in the Permian Basin by 20%. And if you look at the number of active operating oil rigs, these drilling rigs that are required just to maintain the constant amount of production, the count of U.S. oil rigs is now down by 77% versus where it was a year ago. We used to have 776 active rigs in the U.S. It's down to 176. And we are seeing a similar result here in New Mexico, where the oil rig count is down by 60%. And that is in basically Lee and Eddy counties in the portion of the Permian Basin that we see in southeastern New Mexico. And through May, which is the most recent set of statistics that's been reported, oil field employment lost 6,400 jobs in the Permian Basin just in New Mexico alone. We used to have 114 active rigs. We're down to 46 now. And as those fracking companies go bankrupt, who cleans up the abandoned wells? It's going to be the taxpayer, you and me. So that's what has been happening so far. Let's look at the future of oil demand. Well, what's happening is that automobile companies, transportation companies around the world, including General Motors and Ford and Mercedes-Benz and Volkswagen, are announcing major multi-billion-dollar investments to convert their fleets to electric vehicles, which is a very good thing. No carbon emissions come from electric vehicles. But it means that the future demand for oil, of which is made into gasoline, is going to be just one of continuous decline. And the world's most valuable automobile company right now is a pure electric car company called Tesla. And it is more valuable than Toyota and most other automobile manufacturers combined. In addition to that, many countries are taking their Paris Climate Accord agreements very seriously and issuing bans on gasoline or diesel vehicles operating in their cities and their countries, starting with Germany. As soon as last year, Mexico City by 2025, and you look at Norway and China and India, all announcing future bans on having gas and diesel cars operating in their countries, and they will have to all be electric, which continues to drive that conversion of electric vehicles. And electric vehicle growth has been absolutely dramatic worldwide. It's been exponential over the last 6 years. The compound annual growth rate of electric vehicle sales worldwide through the middle of 2019 was 61% per year. That is astonishing. That is what's called exponential growth. And so as a result of all of that, we really need to look at the oil industry and say we cannot rely on it in New Mexico. The future demand is one of continuous decline, and oil prices will stay low as the remaining producers compete to sell their reserves before it's too late. So leads us to the conclusion that we have to have a just transition to a sustainable economy that does not rely on the oil industry in New Mexico. And that oil industry is responsible for about 18,000 jobs, according to the New Mexico Department of Workforce Solutions, which is about 2.2% of all jobs in New Mexico. It's significant, but it is not huge in terms of the number of jobs. In terms of its contribution to tax revenues in the state, typically the oil and gas sector has been contributing about $1 to $2 billion to the general fund. It peaked at over $2.7 billion last year, which was very unusual, and I think we will never see it again. So that's the hole the industry would leave in the New Mexico economy if it were to completely decline to zero, and we have to decide how to replace it. So we need a sustainable economy. Our economy in New Mexico is not diversified at all. We are number 44 among continental states in terms of diversification. And we know that it has to, the oil and gas industry has to wind down. We have some advantages here in New Mexico, however. We have $25+ billion in permanent funds in the land grant and severance tax permanent funds that we can do a much better job of investing within our state. Most of it's invested outside of New Mexico. And of course, we have abundant land and world-class renewable energy resources, including solar, wind, and geothermal, and some very world-class technology talent in our universities and our labs. So we need a plan and a commitment to convert to a sustainable economy in growing sectors like solar and wind manufacturing. By legalizing cannabis, we could actually grow 11,000 jobs in our state that aren't here yet. And we need to promote and increase outdoor recreation and tourism, those sectors, sustainable agriculture. We got a burgeoning film production sector. We could do better in software development, lots of opportunities, including Spaceport America, et cetera, et cetera. And I want to highlight one more, which is to look at developing our geothermal energy resources. New Mexico is actually number 8 in the United States in terms of available geothermal energy in the state. And if I can get it to go back. The main constraint to growing geothermal energy is to be able to have available drilling rigs and trained drillers to drill down and find sources of heat not too far underground. And as we've seen, we've got lots of available drilling rigs that are not being used and oil field workers that could be put to work doing exactly that. So plant that seed. And in terms of income taxes, to fill the gap that's left behind by the oil industry as it declines, we can and should raise the top income tax rate back to where it was in 2002, which might raise another $600 million to fill some of that shortfall. So I will leave you with this photograph of the Los Angeles basin just shortly after they issued their stay-at-home order and people stopped driving their polluting automobiles and trucks so much, and you just see how dramatically the sky's cleaned up. And this is the kind of clean energy, healthy future that we have available to us if we pursue it. And so in conclusion, we know we have to cut our carbon dioxide emissions and thus our oil consumption in half within the next 9 years and to zero by 2050. So let's lead. Let's plan for a just transition to a sustainable economy that works for all New Mexicans. Thank you.
All right, next up we have Global We.
So Global We, the Global We, Global Warming Express, is by kids for kids. It's a think tank both in the classroom and after school for students aged 9 to 12, which was started by a 9-year-old girl in 2012 when she wrote a book by the same name, and gave it to President Obama. in order for him to urge action on climate change. We're really pleased to have 4 wonderful representatives from Global We. There are 4 dynamic kids. Our very first question to the Congresswoman is going to be coming from Magnificent, and I understand she goes by Mags. Mags, are you online?
Yeah, I'm here. So yeah, again, my name is Max. I'm 16. I started with the global warming when I was 9. It's the Global Warming Express is about maybe 8 years, and we're now bringing our programming online. And all the kids on this Zoom are part of the GWE Kids Curriculum Committee. And this year, we've been working on making audio recordings of books for our new online presence, which will be able to reach and teach kids all over New Mexico and the country and even the world. So yeah, you can write to us at info@theglobalwarmingexpress.org for more details. And so I've got my question here. So like in this moment, I know people my age who don't believe. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Hi. I know people my age who don't believe that global warming is a thing. Like they don't think it's real. So the question I have is, how do you plan to inform people who don't believe that it is a real thing?
Thank you, Mags. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your commitment to our environment. Thank you for your commitment to Global We. And I'll tell you, it's not just kids your age. There's a lot of adults who are in denial about climate change. And some of them are my colleagues. So I'll tell you what we do. We keep showing them evidence. We keep showing them evidence. We keep showing them that species are at risk of extinction. We keep showing them that sea level rise is taking away the land base of a lot of communities who live near the coast. We keep showing them that snowfall is at an all-time low in so many places, and that things are so far from essentially normal, if that's what you would like to call it. You know, you get adults who say, oh, well, you know, it snowed today, so that means there's not global warming. But we can see photographs and aerial, you know, real-time photographs of the Arctic, where big ice sheets are melting, and temperatures in Alaska and in the Arctic Circle at 90 degrees during the summer. That is all evidence that our planet is warming. And so what we should do, what we can do, and what we should do is keep showing people the evidence that we see every single day as to why this crisis is so important at this moment. So, you know, you might say that some of those things, you know, it shouldn't matter to people. You know, we don't live up in the Arctic Circle, so why should we care that the ice is melting up there? But there are an awful lot of animals who live in the Arctic Circle that rely on the environment to make sure they can sustain themselves. Not only that, but indigenous people as well. So, so thank you, Mags. I am going to keep doing my part to showing people the evidence of climate change. And I don't think, you know, people can try to dispute that, but it's going to become harder and harder to dispute it.
Awesome.
Next, Sierra, are you on the line?
Here. And she's saying, should I go ahead and start? So this is the interpreter, and she says, hello, Congresswoman Deb Haaland. Thank you for having me. My name is Sierra, and I would like to say, you know, I am deaf-blind, and I am part of the Global Warming Express, and I have been involved for about 3 years now. And I have experienced language barriers and access. And so I'm curious, how can you help disabled people to become more involved because you are at the government level, and how can you help us become more involved? And how can you inform us more as well?
Thank you so much. And I just would like to say that we're very honored to have an ASL interpreter here with us today to make sure that folks can hear what I'm saying and what Tom Solomon said and what Brenda is saying and what Mags has said so far. We all need to take into consideration our disability community. Because yes, everyone, it's an all hands on deck moment. All of us need to care about this crisis. All of us need to join hands. I can tell you, Sierra, that if we were in person, you would be able to participate with us. It does, you know, and I know that you relied probably on family members and friends to help you navigate some areas where you're unable to navigate. And, you know, we still have a lot of marching ahead of us. We still have a lot of protesting ahead of us. We still have a lot of showing the evidence, as I mentioned during Mag's question. And all those things you can help us with. You can help us to write op-eds to the newspaper, to call or write, or, you know, have somebody help you write to our elected officials. You know, it wasn't that long ago that Global We went to the Albuquerque City Council with ideas to ban straws and plastic bags from the city of Albuquerque. Those are all activist ideas and activities that I think you should absolutely participate in. And so I welcome you to participate in as many things as possible. We will, and I thank you for raising that issue, because we absolutely should think about the disability community as we're working on making sure folks have jobs in the renewable energy field, that we have clean energy jobs and other kinds of jobs that Tom talked about, to wean ourselves off of the oil industry and the jobs that are there. So I thank you for raising that with me. I'm going to think about that every time we are proposing a bill. And I just appreciate you being here so much.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you, Sierra. Next is Lori. Go ahead, Lori.
Hi, my name is Lori. I am 12 years old and I've been with the Global Warming Emergency Group for 3 years now. By 2021, we would like to see 5 times more solar and wind power. How can we achieve that?
Thank you, Lori. Well, you know, as you might know, that Congress holds the purse strings to the federal budget. And I think that there's a couple ways that we can achieve that. We can support renewable energy jobs. We can give tax breaks to families who want to invest in solar panels for their homes. We can make sure that folks know about energy credits that they can get if they're moving to solar energy. There's so many things we can do that would not only encourage folks to use more solar and wind and renewable energy, but we can also reward you know, companies who are expanding their renewable energy by helping them with tax breaks and things of this nature. And so this is a serious conversation that we're all having in Congress right now. I'm very proud that I was voted, that I won my election in 2018, along with a large group of environmental leaders, environmental attorneys and other folks who care deeply about the environment. And all of us are huddling consistently to make sure that we are moving our climate forward, our fight of climate change forward. And so I thank you so much for being here, for being part of Global We, and I promise we'll work as hard as we can to see those numbers. Tom Solomon in his presentation, you know, we have benchmarks that we're trying to meet. So we absolutely, we need to get busy. And I thank you for reminding us that.
Thank you, Lori. Suki, are you ready?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Suki. I'm 10 years old, and I've been with the Global Warming Express for about 3 years now. So I know that during this whole pandemic and shutdown, I've been going down to the Rio Grande River a lot. And of course, we explore and have fun, but we've also been picking up all the trash that we find, like floating in the river and on the little sandbar islands. And I wanted to know, like, what are some of the little things you've been doing during the pandemic?
Thank you, Suki. Thank you so much for doing that. You know, I pick up trash wherever I go because the way I look at it, if there's even trash not near the river, it can blow into the river and eventually land in our oceans. And so I really appreciate you taking the time and effort to pick up trash because that means less trash in our ocean and less, chance of turtles or fish or whales eating this terrible trash, plastic, and dying from it. So thank you for that. Suki, I'll tell you, one of the things I do, and I got prepared for your question, I use a stainless steel straw if I ever want to use a straw. I never ever get plastic straws. And I also have, this my daughter bought for me. It is a little package. I can clip it onto my bag, and it's made of sustainable bamboo. And it's a fork, knife, and spoon, and chopsticks. And I take this wherever I go because, especially now during the pandemic, everyone's eating a lot of takeout. So if I get takeout, then I can use this instead of using plastic utensils that I would just throw away. I take this everywhere I go, even long before the pandemic. I had this in my purse, and I would use it at Capitol Hill whenever, we had breakfasts or lunches together as a caucus. I would take my own dish and my own silverware, so I didn't have to use anything that was throwaway. Here at my house, I also compost all of my, all of my vegetable and fruit scraps. We recycle. And of course, I work really, really hard to conserve energy. And if you lived in my house, you might get tired, like my fiance does, of me nagging him to turn the lights out and do all these things. Don't waste water. So we're doing everything we can to make sure that we are good citizens, because I know that the future of our earth depends on it. Thank you for asking me that, Suki.
Thank you, Suki. Thank you, Congresswoman. Well, to keep right back on track on time, I was wondering if we could forego the scheduled bio break so we could listen to our next speaker. What do you think of that, everybody?
That's a great idea, Brenda.
All right. Well, I am really pleased to have Mr. Brian Schmidley with us. He's an 11-year veteran in the renewable energy industry. As CEO of Rio Grande Renewables, Brian developed behind-the-meter solar and energy storage projects through the United States and Latin America. He is now owner of his own company, GeoStrategies LLC, and works with developers, manufacturers, and the EPCs in Latin America. I'm sure he'll tell us what that acronym is, on refining their energy storage, microgrid, and financial engineering strategies. And you know what, folks? When I met Brian recently on the phone, we talked about what he's noticed happening in South America and how climate change is really affecting migration because of crop failure, including something called coffee rust. And so he's going to share with us a little bit more about that and how climate change truly is a global emergency. All right, thank you, Brian. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Brian.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that kind introduction, Brenda. My name again is Brian Schmidley. I'm the owner of GeoStrategies. We are a microgrid consulting firm based in Placitas, New Mexico. This talk today will be brief. It's about 10 minutes to talk about the trends in microgrid technology and some of the business models that I'm seeing as a former developer in the microgrid area. And at the end of my talk, I'll talk about a case study, which is for a project that we developed in Costa Rica for a medical device manufacturer, and the kind of impact, as Brenda mentioned, microgrids is having on migration in Central America. But before I begin, that picture in the background is important, and it's just a reminder of what's at stake in this upcoming election. You know, as Tom mentioned, the stakes couldn't be higher for the climate in November, and we have a choice to make, you know, in terms of what kind of future we want for our kids. We want a future that's going to look like more like the picture on the right, or do we want a future for them that looks more like the image on the left? And I know which image I prefer to see my kids enjoy. So when you're in the ballot box in November, let's make sure that we vote for people who are going to represent us not only at the state level, but at the federal level for a cleaner and protected climate. So let's talk a little bit about microgrids. But before I do, let me tell you a little bit about GeoStrategies. This company I started about 6 years ago. It's really taken off in the last 3 to 4 months, though. But we specialize in supporting developers with microgrid modeling, financing, engineering, construction, and O&M services. Collectively, we have about 50 years of experience with our team in the renewable energy business. And I'm not going to tell you a little bit about me, that's already been covered, but on my team I have Dr. Travis Simpkins, who's not on this call, and his wife Amy Simpkins. Travis is a PhD from MIT in mathematics, and he worked at NREL for 10 years. As an employee of NREL, he developed the REOP software, which is a economic optimization software for microgrids, and it's one of the leading software programs that's used today by the federal government to model microgrid behavior and savings. His wife, Amy Simpkins, works with us as well. She's a former Lockheed Martin engineer. She got her undergraduate degree in aeronautical engineering at USC, and she also has a master's from MIT as well. And she specializes in spacecraft energy system design, which are basically microgrids in space. Last and not least, we have Brian Brueggemann, who's a professional engineer. He lives in Boulder, Colorado, but he supports our efforts globally. He's an APCEP certified master electrician, and he graduated from Iowa State University. So we have an exceptional team of experts available for anyone on this call that wants to learn more about microgrids after today's event. The agenda for today will be a brief overview about microgrids. You know, I'll run through a quick definition, talk to you a little bit about, from a taxonomic standpoint, how do we classify them, whether it's front of the meter, behind the meter, the differences between sort of a central or distributed controlled microgrid and their benefits. Then we're going to talk about the drivers accelerating their adoption. So we're going to touch on climate change, technology improvements, economic gravity, even talk about customer awareness. But then I'll end my talk with some discussion about what I see are the notable trends in this space, and then talk about that case study in Central America. So microgrids, the best definition is really the one you can kind of pull off the web with Wikipedia, but it's a decentralized group of electricity sources like PV or generators or wind, and loads that normally operate connected synchronously to the traditional utility grid, but can also disconnect into an island mode and function autonomously as physical or economic conditions dictate. So as I said, taxonomically, the way I look at microgrids is it's either going to be installed in front of the meter or behind the meter. If it's installed in front of your actual billing meter, That's typically in the terrain of the utility itself, so it's going to be on their wires and as a part of their infrastructure. If your microgrid is installed behind the meter, then it's going to be either on a home, potentially a group of homes, or on a business, or like a university campus or military installation. That's how we typically classify them. In terms of control of a microgrid, there's two ways to look at it. There's two schools of thought. The first one is more of a distributed control platform. If you look at that image on the left, that's kind of what I'm showing you. As you can see, each one of these little black boxes are microgrid controllers, and they're installed at each what we call energy source or DER resource, okay? This is a distributed architecture. So this microgrid detects when the grid goes down or fails, and then if it does, it opens up a switch, and these microgrid controllers start talking and optimizing with each other in order to provide enough energy to support the microgrid during that outage. Okay, I'm a big fan of the distributed control platform because it's much more modular. If you want to add additional DERs or more renewable energy to your microgrid, you don't have to re-engineer everything. You just literally install the new DER asset and drop another microgrid controller in front of it, and it just adds to the resiliency of the site. You don't have to reprogram much, and you don't have to re-engineer the entire microgrid. However, right now, the main most used architecture is a central control platform, and that's using one of these microgrid controllers and plugging on all of these DER assets into one. So I guess the limitation is you only have so many ports in that one controller, so you can only expand it up to a certain point. That right now is the control platform or the control strategy that's being used more often, but I'm starting to see the distributed control platform gain traction in the marketplace. So the main benefits of adding a microgrid controller to your renewable energy assets are you can support higher penetration of renewable energy. As renewable energy grows in importance, the circuits that you're connecting to from the utilities perspective can only take so much renewable energy. Now there's dispute on what that percentage looks like, but when you're in the interconnection application process, the Public Utility Commission basically defines what that is. And if you want to add more renewables to that circuit, then potentially what you're allowed to do from the utility standpoint, you need to have a curtailment approach to curtailing that renewable energy. You can do it with your PV inverters, but it's best to do it with a microgrid controller. It's a little bit more robust, and we've been able to advise our clients on how to get their renewable energy systems permitted and interconnected with the utility using that approach. Microgrids can also increase reliability and resiliency for the particular site. This is the whole point, the entire business case of a microgrid, is that when the grid goes down, the site control platform uses whatever DERs are installed to support the energy or the load on the site. Microgrids can also reduce grid congestion and peak loads. What we mean by that is if the utility has, let's say they're planning for tomorrow and there's going to be a hotter than normal day, they don't have enough power purchased to meet that peak load. If you have a bunch of microgrids installed on that utility's network, they can send a notification to the microgrid owners to island independently during that peak event, and the utility doesn't have to go out and build another transmission line or another generation station to meet that peak load. You can do it through what's called demand response. Also, microgrids are great at supporting economic development. I've built them, so I know the number of jobs that literally touch a microgrid from when you're simulating it from a software standpoint to when you're designing it, engineering it, constructing it, O&Ming it. The supply chain for putting all these pieces of equipment together is long. There's transportation jobs. There's literally hundreds of jobs that can be supported through smart policies that support microgrid development. The other thing that microgrids can do is help businesses save money. So when these microgrids are sitting there waiting for an outage, they're not just like a diesel generator sitting there. They're actually operating, and depending on the types of assets that you've purchased, they're actually actively saving the business, the owner, or the utility territory money at the same time. So microgrids are great. I think they're really cool. I think you're going to start to see them deployed on a larger scale. You know, what's driving microgrid adoption? That picture in the background is, I guess, of the Malibu fires out in California. So climate change is a big driver. As the planet heats up and we see more wildfires, you're going to see the utilities start to turn off or start de-energizing their distribution and transmission lines, because that's essentially what started this fire. So in that event, you're not going to have enough energy to deliver to businesses and homes, so you need microgrids to step in and replace that lost generation. Technology improvements are also driving microgrid development. That means solar prices are still coming down. Inverters for solar panels are getting smarter. Energy storage systems are coming down in price. What's driving that is what Tom pointed out earlier. The increased adoption of electric vehicles is driving down battery prices. So, you know, you're seeing technological improvements and economic gravity drive microgrids to now where they're, you know, you're starting to see discussions around, you know, every single solar system in a CNI, in the commercial and industrial space, should really now come with its own microgrid controller to plug in different assets to provide resiliency services. The prices have come down that much so fast, so it is economical to do that. So going forward, what are the trends that I'm seeing as a former developer? As you can see, that tweet on the left, global microgrid deployment is expected to experience a 28% compound annual growth rate over the next 10 years, and driven by what we just discussed. And I think you'll see the as-a-service business model continue to grow, which is something I'm very familiar with. And that's when you have third-party financiers coming in and purchasing the microgrid equipment, installing it, and selling service and energy or resiliency or efficiency to the host. You're also going to start to see longer duration technologies beat out the 2 to 4 hour lithium batteries, which are the standard today. You know, you're going to see hydrogen come in as well. And I think you're going to see as EVs sort of replace you know, combustion engine vehicles. If you have a microgrid and you got a bunch of EVs plugged into that microgrid, the microgrid's going to want to use the storage, the batteries sitting in those EVs to extend the duration when it makes financial sense to do so. So you're going to start to see more EVs get incorporated into microgrids. And obviously, there's going to be, you know, innovation on the financial engineering side. We've got green bonds that are available now. You've got blended finance options. We've got, you know, socially responsible funds are making investments, and there are ESG qualified stocks now that are also driving investment into these areas. So this is the last slide I'd like to talk about. This is an actual case study for a project in Costa Rica that I developed as CEO of Rio Grande Renewables. It was for Establishment Labs, which is a medical device manufacturer. You can see in the background image, that's a picture of a solar photovoltaic project on their roof. And the 3 pictures above them are of the 2 battery energy storage systems. The picture in the middle right here is there are 2 containers that look like this on the inside. We have the batteries over here. You've got control, PCS architecture over here, transformers, thermal management, lighting. And, you know, this site, it's a major manufacturing industry and hub, but it still experiences 1 to 2 outages a year. Those outages cost the client $60,000 per outage in lost, you know, product or raw material, and up to $100,000 if the outage is for a really long time, so they have to recertify their clean room. So we replaced a 500 kVA diesel generator with these 2 batteries, and this microgrid operating on a daily basis is saving this client $120,000 annually, and it survived a 6-hour outage last year during a Saturday. So to kind of come back to what Brenda mentioned earlier, the importance of deploying microgrids in Latin America, Central America, South America, pretty much anywhere, is that it makes businesses most likely to stay on operating it and operate. It's also delivering them cheaper energy than what they could buy from the utility themselves. So what that does is the decision makers that are that run these businesses have an incentive now to stay and not relocate elsewhere. And the source of relocation is what causes employees to start looking at options elsewhere, moving to different jurisdictions to work and things of that nature. And as it relates to the coffee industry, they're very serious about installing microgrids at their processing facilities because climate change is having a huge impact on coffee production. As the planet warms, the growing conditions and the temperature range that coffee plants can survive and thrive in is shrinking. And as they shrink and certain pieces of land fall out of that temperature and rainfall range, you can get funguses like the coffee rust that will render land ungrowable. And these coffee farmers, either they go in to cities to look for work, and if they can't find work, they head north. And I've seen that personally on my travels in the region. So I appreciate you giving me the time to talk to you a little bit about microgrids today. I apologize, I'm about a minute over, but if you want to reach us, you can find me at geostrategies.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Brian. Looks like we have about 2 minutes for a question for Brian, if there's anybody has any questions there before we welcome Ms. Angela Gonzalez. Let's take a look here. Molly, do you see any questions for Brian?
Let's see here.
Thank you, Brian. That is so comprehensive.
That's my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity to talk today. I don't see any questions coming up, but if they do, I'll be sure to answer them in writing.
Well, folks, thank you for hanging in there and living with ambiguity. I am really pleased to welcome Pattern Development's Miss Angela Gonzalez. She is a native New Mexican, and she's the manager of the New Mexico Project Development for Pattern Energy. Prior to joining Pattern, she was a managing partner with Forever Energy Consulting, LLC, the assistant director for the New Mexico Renewable Energy Transition Authority, and a senior financial advisor for the New Mexico Finance Authority. She has 10 years of experience in the electric transmission industry and 15 years managing and structuring complex public and private financial transactions. I am really pleased and so happy and honored to have Angela join us today. Please welcome Angela.
Great, thank you so much. Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
So I would like to thank the Congresswoman for hosting this event and allowing us to present today. The title of my presentation is What We Believe and Value at Pattern, Transitioning the World to Renewable Energy. What I'm going to walk through with you today is just a quick overview of who Pattern is and a number of efforts we have underway locally that really help us take one step closer to accomplishing our goals. Okay, slide 2 is an overview of who we are. Pattern is a leader in developing renewable energy and transmission assets. We have projects all over the world and have developed around 5,000 megawatts of wind and solar projects. We have projects located in Canada, the United States, and Japan. We're also working on some efforts in Mexico and Chile. Pattern has offices in San Francisco, San Diego, Houston, New York, and New Mexico. We also have locations in Canada, Mexico, Chile, and Japan. On slide 3, you will see a graphical representation of all the projects that Pattern has worldwide. This shows our wind, solar, and transmission projects and also our office locations. On this screen moves more into what's going on in New Mexico. Pattern currently has the largest operating wind farm in New Mexico, known as the Broadview Grady Wind Farm. The Broadview Grady Wind Farm is located in Curry County and is currently operating at 544 megawatts. This project was developed within a couple of phases and went into full operations in 2019. In conjunction, we have also been working on what will be our largest wind farm to date, which is the Western Spirit Wind. Western Spirit Wind is comprised of several different LLCs. This is mostly for business reasons, but we're looking at this project in a holistic view. The wind farm is anticipated to be a 1,050 megawatt project that will be located in the central part of the state. I'll show you a map in just a moment. Western Spirit Wind will be by far the largest wind farm in New Mexico and one of the largest in the US. We have been working on this project since 2016 and are anticipating it will be in full operations by 2021. We are currently breaking ground right now, but anticipate to be in full construction this fall. There will be a ton of work happening in the central part of the state for the next 16 to 18 months associated with this wind farm. The Western Spirit transmission line is a project that Pattern is co-developing with the New Mexico Renewable Energy Transmission Authority, or RETA for short. This transmission line will be used to transmit the Western Spirit Wind project to market. And I'll go into a little bit more information on that transmission line in just a moment. Another project that we're working on, which is taking a significant amount of focus and time, is what we're calling SunZia Wind Project. The SunZia Wind Project is anticipated to be a 3,000 megawatt wind farm that will be transmitted through the SunZia Southwest transmission line, which John Ryan will go into more detail right after my presentation. Our goal is to have a 4,000 megawatt wind farm in the central part of the state between Guadalupe, Torrance, and Lincoln counties. Once built, this will be the largest wind farm in the Western Hemisphere under ownership of one party. On slide 5, it just shows you where the Western Spirit Wind projects are located. As I mentioned, there are several different LLCs, but the main premise is the 1,050 megawatt wind farm project. You will also see where it interconnects into the Western Spirit transmission line, which will ultimately get us into the grid to send power where we need. On slide 6 is a little more information on the Western Spirit transmission line project. As I mentioned, this is a first of its kind public-private partnership between Pattern and RETA. The line is approximately 155 miles long, 345 kV line, and has been under development for the past 10 years. The unique part of this is when this line is built, it will actually be sold to P&M, but it does not impact ratepayers at all. Slide 7 is a map of that transmission line. It starts in the Clines Corners region, loops out and back around into Albuquerque, and will interconnect to a newly constructed Pajarito substation that will be built during the same time the transmission line and will be in service in 2021. On slide 8 is an overall map of Western Spirit and SunZia Wind, just to give you a big picture of what we are really looking at and working on. Pattern is the anchor tenant for the first 1,500 megawatts of capacity on the SunZia transmission line. We would expect construction of the wind farm and the transmission line to coincide with one another, just because one can't be built without the other. We need both the wind and transmission for this to be successful, and we expect that to be in service by the end of 2024. And with that, I will send it back to you, Brenda. Thank you so much.
Angela, fantastic. This is so exciting. And I know, my colleagues and I, we first started to learn about the big wind transmission projects for New Mexico last year with your leader, Jeremy Turner. So, so having you with us today in the virtual event with the Congresswoman is is just so welcome and so beneficial to all of us. So next we have a very good colleague of yours, Angela, and that is SunZia's Mr. John Ryan. John is also a native New Mexican, and he's the executive director of SunZia New Mexico. He provides leadership and strategic direction to New Mexico's operation and to the advancement of SunZia's state and federal agencies. You may not know this, but John also served New Mexico as a state senator for 12 years. So that tells you how well-rounded and how knowledgeable John is. He has also owned and operated a highly successful consulting firm, Capital Consultants LLC, since 2002. And it represents electrical utilities, local governments, land and water clients, and nonprofits. Welcome, John. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Congresswoman, for putting this virtual presentation and virtual opportunity to discuss really important things that are happening not only in the United States, around the world, but here in New Mexico. And I am a recovering politician, having served a little bit in the state Senate and worked in Washington for Washington, D.C. for many years. You know, SunZia is one of these projects that when I started on it back in 2008, I used to think a lot about you know, build it and they will come. And SunZia tried to do and is trying to do and is being successful in doing that. We're building the transmission lines to get the wind potential in New Mexico into the markets, Western markets, into New Mexico itself, into the grids in New Mexico, and build it, and they will come. And we started without Pattern being an anchor tenant. We started without wind in the central part of New Mexico, and we've got a lot of scars and a lot of history with regard to you know, this particular project. It's a huge project. I think Angela mentioned that the wind farms that will be connecting into the SunZia transmission line would be. Let me tell you a little bit about SunZia, and then I'll go into some of the things we've been through. I'll give you a little bit of a schedule of when we'll be in service, and talk a little bit about the importance of bringing together the federal government, the state government, local government, and a lot of different interest groups to get them to be supportive of the transmission is very difficult. But let me start with SunZia. What is it? SunZia is, we are siting two 500 kV lines. They allow a lot of capacity on the lines. We don't have any 500 kV lines in New Mexico currently. The largest are 345. 500 kV allows a lot of capacity, a lot of wind energy to be transported along our transmission lines into other markets. It's a 500 plus mile transmission project where we start in central New Mexico, where the wind farms are, where Pattern's wind farms are. And we are getting to Arizona between Phoenix and Tucson, and into Palo Verde, which is a hub into California. And so the goal here is to you know, help with climate change, help with renewable energy, help with wind power. And none of that happens without the transmission to get all that into the system, so that we're all you know, benefiting from the clean energy. And back in 2008, New Mexico had a renewable portfolio standard of 10%. Today, we're looking at a goal of being carbon free by the year 2045, 2050. We've made huge progress in New Mexico, but for us to be a national leader in developing wind, we've got to have transmission. And I think, and I know that our congressional delegation, our governor, lots of legislative leaders are all pulling together to make New Mexico one of the leading wind energy states in the country. Let me explain a little bit about SunZia further, which is the company that's building SunZia is MMR Group. They're based in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And the Southwestern Power Group, which is a subsidiary of MMR in Phoenix. Now, these companies have spent over $100 million of at-risk capital to date. We started, like I said, back in 2008, so we've been working on this project for 12 years. We've gone through federal permitting. There was 7 years of NEPA analysis, environmental overview of the project. When you cross federal lands, you have to do that. And they're here to stay, and we have probably 2 more years of permitting, and we'll start construction. Construction will be a massive undertaking. These are SunZia is more than $1 million per line, so more than $2 billion of investment into New Mexico and part of Arizona. It's a project that has been through a lot, and you can't just say, well, here's where the wind farms are, here's where the markets are in Arizona or California, and just draw a straight line. You have to systematically avoid certain things, and you want to follow certain paths. What we like to do and what we needed to do was follow corridors, follow infrastructure projects. You want to avoid population. You want to avoid environmentally sensitive areas. You want to avoid military areas, native areas, cultural, biological important areas. And so you put all that together and you wind up with lots of deviations with regard to how to get the path.
John, you're muted.
Did I get muted?
Yeah, there you go. I think we lost your last sentence that you said.
I got a little excited when we start talking about these things. So, you know, you avoid certain sensitive areas, and you follow corridors, and you want to land, you want to avoid populations, and we update and we brief leaders in Congress, leaders in New Mexico, leaders locally. We visit with landowners. We're negotiating with them on right-of-way leases. And in the end, these are really big projects. They're going to create a lot of jobs and opportunities in New Mexico. There'll be a lot of revenue spread out amongst the different governmental entities. And then on top of that, you know, the benefit is we will all benefit from having much cleaner energy and wind energy to benefit this whole region. You know, I think what I'll do is just kind of wrap up with a little bit of our schedule for this year. Our schedule for this year is we are looking for an alternative route. So we are reopening our NEPA process, which is a federal government process led by the Bureau of Land Management in New Mexico. We need to and want to look at an alternative route that allows us to avoid the White Sands Missile Range northern call-up area. This is a national security issue. And so by rerouting SunZia, we are going to open up a process whereby the public will have opportunity to comment on our line and participate with the Bureau of Land Management and make recommendations with regard to where and how we change the route, but still get to our wind in central New Mexico and then move the project further along. So stay tuned for that. There's lots of things that the federal government is doing to promote renewable energy. I think the Congresswoman mentioned tax credits, and there's some regulatory kinds of things that occur in all the administrations. State is very active in promoting renewables as well, and wind energy. And with all that, we have an opportunity here in New Mexico to be a leader, and that's what we're trying to do with regard to wind. And we'll stay tuned and want you guys to watch our progress. And you could find us on sunzia.net with a lot of the details of the project. And I hope this has been helpful. But thank you very much, Brenda. Thank you very much, Congresswoman. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, John. And Angela and John, we do have a question from one of our attendees, and that is, what is the relationship with the SunZia lines and the Rio/Bosque bird migration patterns?
Well, the transmission lines like SunZia that are trying to transport New Mexico's wind to Western markets, you have to cross the Rio Grande River. And therein lies an issue that SunZia and other projects have grappled with is where do you cross and how do you cross? And what we are doing is working with environmental groups locally, environmental groups nationally, to come up with the best places to cross, to come up with mitigation kinds of measures that you can implement to prevent prevent bird strikes on our transmission lines. And in those discussions with various environmental groups, we will present a lot of information to the Bureau of Land Management, and then the Bureau will help make that decision about where best to be that protects and considers the beautiful environment that we have and the fantastic migration patterns up and down the Rio Grande that go all the way through from Albuquerque all the way through past Socorro. We've got cranes and a lot of birds that are migrating through this path that we're very sensitive about making sure that we do it in a very environmentally responsible manner.
Very good, John. And as a follow-up, Judy is wondering if the lines can be buried.
Thank you, Judy. We have been in discussions with you and a lot of local groups with regard to those issues, and that will be presented to the Bureau of Land Management, and they will have, I'm sure, a robust look at whether or not that is beneficial to the environment, and what is going to be, a decision that they'll have to make. And we look forward to our further discussions with you about the importance, the technical aspects of what you would have to do to go underground, and or compare that to overhead lines, and just make sure that whatever we do or wind up doing at the river is is protecting the birds and the migration paths that are creating a lot of tourism and a lot of benefit for the local communities in those areas.
Thank you, John. And it looks like we have time for one more question. And please keep in mind, attendees, if you think of a question that we have not been able to get to, please send it our way, and we will be sure to review those and get a response to you. Okay, John, there's one more question from Susan. She says, hi, John, will you be starting the project in the same area of central New Mexico?
We are looking at alternative routes, and we need to be where the wind is the best, and central New Mexico, so that's Lincoln, Guadalupe, Torrance, those counties have really good wind, and so we will be in that area where that will be our eastern terminus, and then we obviously need to go west and get to the area in between Phoenix and Tucson. So the answer is yes. We'll still be building to central New Mexico.
Thank you very much, John. And I do appreciate all of the presentations today. And like I said, folks, those of you online who do think about another question, even later on this afternoon, please don't hesitate. We really do appreciate. We want to be responsive, and we will send questions to our presenters as they come up. All right. So with that, and keeping right on time, since I was a bit delayed earlier, I would like to have our raffle commence right now, and that we're going to have our Congresswoman come right back up. And she has the number of tickets to pull. And we have, look at that wonderful raffle ticket bowl. As the Congresswoman said earlier, the Albuquerque Water Authority has been very generous, and they've donated a 100-gallon rain barrel. So, all right, Congresswoman, what number do you have? All right, number 1.
Brenda's going to tell us who number 1 is, I guess, or you'll tell them.
Yeah, I'm gonna get the name for you right now.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. So happy that you joined us today. Thank you for all your patience with the technical issues. You know, it's hard no matter what. I give kudos to everyone who can, manage the technical issues and all of the Zoom calls and other technology that we have been forced to use since we're working remotely. So thank you for bearing with us. And I'd just like to recognize my staff, Brendan McKenna and Molly Callahan, for doing such an amazing job today. And if you want to give them a hand, you can do that.
Thank you, Congresswoman. And our winner's name was just sent to you?
Misty.
Yes.
Misty, congratulations, Misty. You won the 100-gallon rain barrel.
All right, Misty. I will arrange with you and get your brand new rain barrel to you, okay? And with that, Congresswoman, do you have any closing words for our audience today?
I would just like to say that this pandemic is not over yet. So wear your masks, wash your hands, stay 6 feet away from people, be courteous to our fellow New Mexicans, and let's all do our part to make sure we can move our state forward from this terrible virus. And at the same time, care about climate change, care about our environment, be kind to animals, and thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you, Congresswoman. And thank you to our wonderful interpreter today.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful day, folks. Be safe.
Bye, everyone. Bye, Tom.